CBN Monetary Policy Committee retains interest rate for the 16th time at 11.5% after its 2 days meeting, as 4 out of 10-member committee voted against retaining the interest rate. While reading the communique after the meeting, the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele disclosed that 3 members, or 4, voted to raise the MPR by 25 basis points. 1 member voted to raise MPR by 50 basis points, while 6 members voted to hold all parameters constant. According to him, the decision was informed by the recent heightening of uncertainties confronting the recovery of the global economy and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has introduced a new dimension of risk to the lukewarm recovery of the global economy. So the question is, what is likely to be the impact of the latest CBN stance on the economy? So let's bring in our guest now. Mr. Cinematography is the CEO, MD, APT Securities and Funds. He joins us via the telephone now. Thank you for your time, Mr. Kasimu. We appreciate you. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, just before we get started on the latest CBN's interest rate, let me get your opinion on the commissioning of Dangote's fertilizer complex on Tuesday in Lagos and the potential that is bringing, because according to the report I have here, it is built to produce about 3 million metric tons to the economy, or to Nigeria, to add up to what we consume here. I want to ask you, another information we also have here is that it also will generate about $400 million of foreign exchange. So, how excited are you about this news?
Well, if you remember, in 2016, in Roma, Import Accord have started producing urea. And the major component of urea is gas, which we have a lot of natural gas in abundance. Now we got Dangote fertilizer, which is going to produce 3 million metric ton per annum. That is 2 times the size of Indroma. So when you combine the two, we are talking about 4.5 million metric ton per annum. Really, this is an improvement. But don't forget that in 2015, we have only 3 plants of fertilizer that are just partially working. Today, as I'm talking to you, we have 47 plants working fertilizer, most of them in capacity. And this has to do with the federal government policy where they lines with Morocco, who has abundance of raw material, and now bring it into the country for most of our fertilizer plant work. But that is not urea. The urea is the major component for most of the grain. Now we have got the 2 plants. But the truth of the matter, because of the pricing and the devaluation of the naira, both Indroma and Dangote prepare to export it because urea is globally highly in demand. As I'm talking to you, they export to US, they export to Brazil, they export to India, and many other countries that are in desperate need of it. Even though we here in Nigeria, we still need that heat. Maybe with the government intervention, we'll see the wisdom, because it's not good to produce and export without satisfying the local domestic, because we really need it.
Yes, of course, the country needs it. We have a lot of farmers across Nigeria who actually needs it, especially the urea fertilizer. But again, Nigeria is estimated to need about 5 to 7 million metric tons of fertilizers in terms of consumption annually. Talking about urea, potassium, and other various types of fertilizers as well. But how do you think we can meet up, or how significantly with these bring a difference into the consumption rate at the moment, especially with the Dangote fertilizer coming into the picture?
Well, definitely, sir, you remember Dangote fertilizer is just phase 1. in the very near future, he will open the other piece where he will go into the other blending, because urea is majorly produced from gas, which is all known to all of us that you need gas to produce it, so it's not common to the other African country. In most cases, they don't even have the oil, talk less of gas. So you can see that even within the African context, we need it. But you look at a country with a population of over 210 million, and we need to feed ourselves. So if we really need to do that, we need to produce fertilizer. Now, with about 47 blending plants that are there, already the price of fertilizer has gone down. If you remember, in 2015, a bag of fertilizer is going between 13 to 15,000 naira per 50 kilogram.
Right.
Today, as I'm talking to you, it will go as low as 5, but as today I'm talking to you, due to the inflation, it's hovering between 8 to 9,000. The price is not what matters. What matters is the availability of it. With the coming of Dangote, it will make more competition and more availability to most of the farmers. And the beauty of this, these Nigerians, they can study our soil and produce the fertilizer that suits our purpose, which will invariably increase our yield, and it will increase our capacity to feed ourselves and to export across the nation. And if they do that, it is better for the economy and for all of us.
Now, talking about pricing, in this case, how do we ensure that there is a moderate price and without taking advantage of the system? Because you have few producers.
I think we can do it in two ways. What are the raw materials of most of these fertilizers? The raw materials are for the Dangote and the Indroma, and the raw materials are natural gas. And we have natural gas in abundance. So in that respect, the government can subsidize it by allowing them to get it at a lower rate so that they produce and supply to the Nigerian. But for the ones that export, there is no need to subsidize outside. Let them take it at the commercial rate and they can export that portion. But the government should put their eyes to make sure that it is not done at the detriment of the local farmers. So that as long as they need foreign exchange, they can export, but at the same time, let meet up the local demand, because our local demand for the urea, I don't think that we need 4.5 million. We may need maybe 2 or maximum 3, because we need NPK and other component of the fertilizer for the other production. And those blending plants are seriously working on it because of our relationship with the Morocco that supply us of the raw material. And they are getting it at a lower price, which makes it cheaper and better for them to be in full production.
Right. Well, a final question on that, on this one now. So let's look at the market potential and what this means for the economy. Who benefits more, the businessman or the country?
Both. Because businessman doesn't put his money where there is no benefit. Not any businessman just dash his money. He invests in order to make money. So the businessmen that go into it make money. If we have 47 fertilizer plant in the country, it shows you there is money. If there is none, they wouldn't have gone. Before 2015, we have less than 4. So there is money. The other side, we benefited in the sense that our farmers now are getting their fertilizer as when due. Not importing fertilizer after the rain finish. Now you will get it as when due. Because we are the producers, so the farmers can buy it even at the harvesting period and keep for the safekeeping. The other side that we can also export, because remember that we are the heart of Africa. From Nigeria to Senegal, from Nigeria to South Africa, from Nigeria to Egypt, you see we are more on the center. So if we can produce it, we benefit more of Africans. As outside Africans, the other one are in need of it. As I'm talking to you, Dangote supply Brazil, US, and India. So it shows you that we will benefit by getting more additional foreign exchange. And if you get more additional foreign exchange, it saves you from the valuation of your naira. Because it's the other way around. You will look for foreign exchange to import it. Now you don't need to import it, you are exporting. Remember that what happened to cement. 10 years back we are importing cement. Today we are net exporter. We don't import any single bag of cement, we rather export. Now it applies to fertilizer, one by one. As long as we continue to move, we move forward and the economy will be better for all of us.
Okay. Mr. Kofi, I would just want us to take a breather before we get back to the next conversation talking about the MPC outcome there. But let's quickly take a break. Just hang on there. We'll take a break now. I'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us.
Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, professional dry cleaners, best in dry cleaning and laundry services, and meets the needs of our consumers. Yeah, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, yeah, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, yeah, for clean wash and quick delivery, yeah. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, for clean wash and quick delivery. Ooh.
Swift Dry Cleaners. Clean wash, quick delivery.
Glad we can have you back again on Business Breakfast. And let's now look at the CBN Monetary Policy Committee retaining the interest rate for the 16th time, the 11.5%. So it's about 4 out of 10 member a committee voting, which voted against retaining the interest rate. But the question is what is likely to change or what is likely to be the impact of the latest CBN stance on the economy. So let's get straight now. Mr. Kofi, Garuba Kofi is the MD CEO, APT Securities and Mutual Funds. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kofi.
Thank you very much.
Now, what's your take? This is the 16th time the CBN will be leaving the interest rate unchanged, across, and also the parameters, all parameters talking about their symmetric corridors, the CRR and the liquidity ratio. What's your take on this?
Well, I'm not surprised because in the past there was a time they retained the same rate for 30 consecutive times. So 16 times is not much, and we are in uncertainty.
Right.
Initially, the global expectation that there is expectation in the growth in the GDP worldwide. But because of this Russia-Ukraine crisis, which nobody can precisely predict when it will come to an end and to what extent it can cause, everybody is the watch out. And that's what the CBN did. Decided to hold everything and to see what is the likely. Remember, this is the meeting that hold every 2 months. It hold in January for January and December. Now it will hold in March for February and March. It will hold in May for April and May. And within that period, they will be able to predict what are the likely outcome of this war. Will it escalate or it will be minimized? So it all depends on that. And don't forget that our indices are still working positively, except the inflation, which we all aware what caused the inflation. Lack of power and the scarcity of petroleum. These single two are enough to push the inflation up. So aside this one, we are seeing that the GDP is still working and is working in such a rate that we can say that we are not satisfied, but we are better off. because they are talking of 3.98 to 4% GDP growth, which is okay, is ahead of our inflation. And as we have said earlier, we are only better off if the growth of our economy is much better than the growth of our inflation and our population. And that is there. So with these indices is better for what they retain it for now, and let us watch how this war will take us and what are those dimensions that are taking. Because most of the foreign investors are very cautious, especially in view of what happened in the Europe. Most of the Russian investors were just find that in a situation where they never expected. And therefore people think otherwise. And if this will continue, I can tell you that it will affect more of dollars because people will look at other currency that they can sustain them, not US dollars.
Now, before the CBN met, of course, some experts have, projected that perhaps the CBN may bring a bit of tapering or disruption on its monetary policy, given the fact that inflation rose from 15.6% in February to 17%, or about, I beg your pardon, in January to 15.70% in February. And so that may likely impact on their decision at the MPC meeting, but that didn't happen as well. But if you look at the outcome of these, about 4 members, voted against retaining the interest rate. Perhaps that could mean that there could be future possible hike. Is that correct?
Yes, there will. Definitely, sure. If we continue to experience scarcity and lack of power, once you lack the power and there is scarcity of oil, two things will happen. The transportation will go up and the generating power will also high. And all these add to the cost of production and therefore the inflation will go. What the inflation did is just 10 basis points. 10 basis points is not enough to change your rate. If you remember the Ghanaian Central Bank, they did the same. They increased their rate, but I don't think that our situation is that bad. So what they decided to be conservative, to hold it, to watch what is the likely outcome of the inflation by the end of the month of March, and April is better. If the inflation, which I believe will go high, that they may push them to push the rate higher.
Well, let me also say this again. Well, is it at par at the moment, and what does it mean? Maybe you need to make sense of this. Some people do not understand, especially some on the ordinary street, that the impact of the current status quo, that the CBN had to leave the interest rate and other parameters at the same position. So what does this mean? What will be the impact in the economy? How will it affect the ordinary man in the street? And how do you explain the fact that the the inflation rate is rising, and of course the CBN still have to leave the interest rate as it is?
If you look at our production, there is what you call this MPI, the manufacturing index. If you look at consumer index, MCI, if you look at it, it's relatively 50. And 50, which is good, that is manufacturers are producing. And therefore, CBN has to be very careful so that, because rising it means that the cost of borrowing will be higher. And the cost of borrowing, once it is high, it reduces productivity in the manufacturing sector. And with this theme of unemployment, we don't want that. If you are all listening, you will have to, when the Elijah Aliko Dangote said that, they thank Bank of Industry for the loan they gave them to complete this fertilizing part. So that we need money. And if you need money to produce, then you have to make sure that the rate is not that high. And if you allow the rate to go high, it will make the cost of borrowing very high, and it will deny productivity, and it will affect the economy generally. So that is why they did not do that. And for me, it's a good measure. Let us watch and see. 10 basis points is nothing to worry about. Don't forget that in the previous year, we had a time when the inflation was as high as 18%. We are talking of 15.7. So we are still better off. Even when it was 18%, they did not change the rate. So why should they change it now when it is just 15.7? Because of an increase of 10 basis points. Yes, of course, the common man is pretty much higher than the 10 basis points. But don't forget, the common man is looking at the individual. The cost of transportation has increased. The cost of diesel has increased. These are individual components. The aggregate is still better.
Now, there were expectations that the CBN was going to address the issue of forest crisis, but it would look like the CBN really didn't mention or do much in the area of forest crisis, addressing the irregularities in that particular sector or segment of the market.
By choice, they can address it, they can decide to leave it for the National Board for Statistics. National Board for Statistics is the one that gives the inflation rate. And they have the right, the DG National Board for Statistics can explain all the inflation that is going on in the rural area, in the urban area, in the food sector, in the transport, and all the components that make up the inflation aggregate. So if anything, I think it's not over. We still expect the DG National Board for Statistics at its own time to explain to the public what is all about the inflation.
Okay, so let's also look at the some monetary policy tool or intervention of the CBN in some other sectors like agri. I mean, the CBN says that between January and February 2022, he said the bank has disbursed about 29.67 billion naira under the Anchor Borrowers Program for the procurement of inputs and cultivation of maize. They mentioned rice, wheat, and other commodities. Of course, they also that these three crops, particularly wheat and cultivation of cassava, and looking at the fact that smallholder farmers cultivate about 21 commodities. Yet we have seen the prices of food going up in recent time. We also talk about the fact that the disruption that this will bring into the wheat market, the demand perhaps may trigger inflation for that particular commodity as well because of the Ukraine and Russia crisis. What exactly do you think is the issue with the fact that we have the CBN's intervention in some of these particular sectors, but yet we're seeing the prices of food rising?
Well, we thank God that CBN intervened at the right time. Because I'm telling you, had CBN did not intervene, today we will hear another story. Because all what we have to do, we have to input. What is the exchange rate? What is the transportation cost? But today we are producing it. Most of us now, we no longer look at the foreign rice. Because the local rice is well refined, well polished, that you cannot even believe it's locally made here. And if you look at the cost of transportation, what will it cost you to transport a bag of rice from the port down to Kano? With this cost of diesel going 600 to 800 naira per liter, it will be enormous. But because if you go to Kano, they produce it there, then they sell it there. If you go to Yola, or you go to Taraba, or you go to Kebi, they produce it there and they sell it. So they save the cost of transportation. So for us, the intervention of CBN is a welcome development, and we wish and hope that CBN intervention will continue until such a time that we stabilize. Don't forget that they have done RT 200, the policy recently, and this one also to promote exportation as well as the processing plant that can process most of our agricultural products so that we can add value to it. And if we succeed in doing that, it will be better for the economy and we are all better off. But as I'm talking to you, the farmers are laughing and the farmers are happy.
Okay, let me get your last thought on this one. What's your outlook for the economy in the second quarter of the year, given the CBN's stance now?
Well, the outlook, it depends on so many things. One, we hope and pray that the crisis between Ukraine and Russia come to an end, or at least let's reach a point of agreement where there will be peace. that can reduce the tension globally. And if it reduces the tension globally, that will ease other things to come out, because nobody will write of Ukraine and Russia. They produce about 30% of the wheat globally. And if you got a supply of any product, 30% of it, you know it may inflation. You will not get bread, the price you are getting it. You will not get spaghetti, the price you are getting it. You will not get flour, the price you are getting it. And that are the basic food that across the nation, both the poor, the middle, and the rich eat from that. So we hope that this will be. And we hope that the NNPC will be do it possible to stabilize the availability of petrol. Because once it is available, it will reduce the cost of aviation and the diesel. Because these are what is causing this problem into us. And I couldn't understand. Are our power generated from diesel or from gas? If it is from gas, we shouldn't have been lacking power now as we are lacking. If it is from diesel, then they were all telling us something else. Because we are not getting the power as we do to get. Is it due to the cost of diesel or what?